Well, it's great to be out here in Greater Western Sydney at St Anthony's Catholic Primary School here at Girraween. And I'm here with the local member, Michelle Rowland. I'm here with David Bradbury, who's a member of Lindsay, and there's Susan. Susan Templeman, who's our candidate at Macquarie, not far from here at all. I think when I travel around the country, what I find is people tired of wall-to-wall negativity. What they really want is a positive approach to the future. They want the country to be united and positive rather than just negative and divided, which is a bit how it's shaping up in certain political quarters in Australia at the moment. I think what Australians also want is a clear-cut approach on the big questions of the economy, economic management, jobs, and cost of living pressures. This is so much central to the lives of Australians right across Greater Western Sydney, right across the nation. And that's what we're here to talk about today. I've said before that Australia faces new economic challenges because after a decade-long China mining boom, it's coming to a close. And as a result of that, we have a big new challenge, which is how do we diversify the economy? How do we make sure all of our eggs are not just in one basket in the future? And how do we do that through a new national competitiveness agenda? And we're building that on 7 separate pillars. And one of those pillars is making sure that we have the best skilled, best trained, best educated workforce anywhere in the world. And that's why we're investing in a Better Schools plan. And St Anthony's here, out in Girraween, is going to benefit from the work done by this Australian government to make sure that our kids have the best possible one-on-one attention in the future. The whole purpose of keeping the economy strong and also to make sure people are in jobs is also to ensure that cost of living pressures for Australian families are kept under control. The interest rates decision yesterday is important, and we will do everything we possibly can to ensure that interest rates are kept as low as possible. On cost of living pressures, the biggest pressure which most families face is paying off the mortgage. And if you are on average $300,000 mortgage, you are now paying $6,000 a year less than you were back in 2006 towards the end of Mr. Howard's period in government. That is a huge difference. It's one of the other reasons why we've been so determined to keep supporting families with the school kids bonus. That extra bit of money which helps buy the uniforms, buy the books, help the kids with their out-of-school activities. $410 a year for primary school kids, I think $820 for secondary school kids. That all helps. And on childcare, the fact that we've been able to increase childcare rebate from 30%, which is what it was when we first took office, to 50%, these are big cost of living measures on childcare, on school kids bonus, but in particular on what people are paying on their mortgages and on their small business loans as well. Which brings us to out-of-school hours care. It is really important. I've not been to St Anthony's before, but I've been talking to these kids this morning and their out-of-school hours care supervisors. More than 40 children each morning come here from I think 7 or 7:30 in the morning, and they are brought here by their mums and dads, hoping that they're going to get the best possible care, and what I've seen they are. It's terrific. And after school, here at St Anthony's, I'm told by the supervisors, there's 140 kids here in after school hours care. And I've been talking with David and talking to Susan, talking also with Michelle. This is a fairly standard picture across Greater Western Sydney. Out of school hours care is really central for how families juggle their really complex lives and their cost of living pressures. So the policy that we announced earlier in the week, which is $450 million to support another 500 schools, up to 500 schools around the country, to find either more places, more flexible hours, or, just as importantly, more activities, supervised homework clubs, supervised sporting activity, music lessons, to make sure that these hours are used as effectively as possible to make it good for our kids, good for their parents, and frankly, good for the bottom line as well in the family budget. What I want to indicate today is that we need to make sure that these new services are made clear to parents around Australia. I understand in New South Wales, based on current usage, around 98,000 kids could benefit from this investment. This is really important, but it's important that all those parents of those kids have an idea where to find the information. So our Better Schools Before and After is going to be made clear and clearer through the changes that we'll make to the My Child website. Got it there, mate? So one of the early initiatives of the Australian Government was the mychild.gov.au website. It's to provide parents with a very practical guide in terms of what's available at schools in given locations around the country. It's been a very good practical initiative for families. What we'll be doing is a revamp of this website to make sure that we've got more information in there about the activities of childcare services, including out-of-school hours care services, and the particular offerings of each location. More up-to-date information on vacancies and waiting lists to save parents time in searching for a place, and a new service which will be called My Childcare that will allow them to register for notifications when a place becomes available in a preferred provider. This is practical stuff. This is about mums and dads. They may have just moved into Girraween last week, and they're saying, where's the kid going to go to school? Where do I get the best OSHC? Where can I find out what services are being provided? This upgrade will cost us $2 million, which will be absorbed by the department. This is important practical stuff, and it's all about making sure that we are doing the best possible by our kids. Let me just turn to one or two other points before I take your questions this morning. I've spoken already about cost of living pressures and where all that stands for the future. And I've said what's happened on interest rates and what's happened in these other areas as well. And we've seen in the last 48 hours Mr. Abbott and his Treasury spokesman fundamentally at odds on monetary policy, that is, whether there should be lower interest rates or not. We've seen Mr. Abbott and his Treasury spokesman fundamentally at odds on whether the alternative government will produce a budget bottom line or not. We now seem to see the alternative Prime Minister and the alternative Deputy Prime Minister from the National Party fundamentally at odds as to whether there's going to be a paid parental leave policy of the type Mr. Abbott's described in the past, put out there again, because this is a big need in the community, and our scheme's been up and running for quite some time, the first in Australian history. And I think what we see is increasing evidence of a bit of a shambles on their side on basic questions of economic and budget management. If it was myself and Chris Bowen having a disagreement in the last 24 hours, Prime Minister and Treasurer, over 1, interest rates policy, 2, fiscal policy, that is, whether we should produce a budget bottom line, like we've done with the economic statement last week, or 3, whether or not we're going to have a paid parental leave policy or not, and how it's to be funded, you would rightly attack us. The other mob are in a complete shambles on this. And I would draw that to everyone's attention if the core question in the minds of Australians is who is going to manage this $1.5 trillion economy through the difficult shifts and challenges which come ahead of us because of the end of the China mining boom. One final thing which I believe is so critical for the future, and that is the statement that we have reported in the newspapers today that a rise in the goods and services tax and possible expansion of its base, that is, I presume to cover food, is now on the Liberal Party agenda. Today's Financial Review puts it pretty starkly, and that's based on an interview with Mr. Abbott's Treasury spokesman. This is significant stuff. If you're going to jack up the goods and services tax, you've got to be upfront with the Australian people about how much What's it going to cost them? If you're going to extend the goods and services tax onto food, which is what expanding the base means, then you've got to be upfront with people. If we're going to have a debate about cost of living pressures, a goods and services tax on practically everything that Australian families buy is the most fundamental thing at all. So what we're seeing through multiple statements now by Mr. Hockey and by Liberal premiers around the country and others is that this goods and services tax increase is now increasingly on the agenda. In fact, I think Mr. Hockey, Mr. Abbott's Treasury spokesman, says this review of the goods and services tax has to be part of the equation. You've had one Liberal premier after the other saying the goods and services tax has to be increased. And now we have in today's Australian Financial Review, Mr. Hockey, in an interview, indicating clearly that raising the goods and services tax is on the Coalition's agenda. And he says again, it's part of the equation. So I think this is a big, big development in this election campaign. It's about economic management, it's about budget management, and it's about cost of living pressures for families. If you're going to go about increasing the goods and services tax and expanding its coverage to include food, this is a massive issue for Australian families across the country. Final point is about $70 billion worth of cuts to jobs and to education and to health. Here we are in the first week of this election campaign, and I want to know when Mr. Abbott is going to put out there for everyone to see what he will cut in jobs and health and education to fund a figure which his Treasury spokesman has himself used, a $70 billion shortfall. The goods and services tax increase seems to be the hidden part of the agenda about how they actually bring these things together. So, over to you.